Hi, I'm Cindy with Phil's Sewing Machines, and today I'd like to show you this impressive little serger, the Baby Lock Vibrant. It's at a great price point and just packed with features. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how easy it is to thread this. This machine has great exposure. You can open up this door, but you can also open up the working door. There's a little latch where you would pull it towards you, and this opens to fully expose the threading path. There's a little diagram here in the front to show you a lot, as well as in the manual. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to thread the lower looper. Now I've color coded these to match the needles and the loopers on the threading path. So I'm going to start with the lower looper. We're going to first come to the guide on the antenna, and there's a little guide back here, and you just snap that in between there. You're going to hear a little click, and you're going to pull it down through the tension, and we're going to follow all of the blue paths, and you just hear a little click. Here's another one. There's the blue one, and there's another blue one on the lower looper itself. We're going to click it right in there, and then I'm going to hold on to this thread and turn my hand wheel to expose the eye of the lower looper, and then I'll just thread it through the eye, and with the help of my tweezers I'm going to pull it right through. Now the next one we're going to thread is the upper looper, which is green. Take our thread through the guide on the antenna, click it through the guide before the tension disc, pull it down through the tension disc, and we're going to follow the path of the green. Anything with the green dot. Here's another one here. And the best way to thread this one is just to go towards the back. And we're going to get it right around there. And then I'll turn my hand wheel to show the eye of the upper looper. And we'll thread it right through the eye of the upper looper. And we're going to pull that back. Get that lower looper thread out of the way. Now the next thing we're going to thread is the needles. Easy so far, huh? Go through the telescopic guide on the antenna, and then you're going to see we've got guides here. I'm going to simply move it through that first guide, and then these are the tension disc, and we're going to go around it until we hear it click, and you'll feel it that it's got a little tension. Now you're going to make sure you always have your presser foot up when you're threading the needles. So, and it's going to come under this guide, and it's showing it right here over these. And because it's the right, there's another guide here. We're going to go to the right side, and then we'll thread our needle. I'm going to trim that thread a little bit so we've got a nice edge to thread that needle. And then we'll pull that around to the back. And now we're going to do our left needle. And that left needle is the red. We're going to follow the red path up through the antenna, through the pre-tension guide here. And did you hear that click inside that disc, the tension disc? I'm going to go under those, over these, and this is going to go to the left. We're going to trim our thread and thread the needle. Oh, Let me get it a little closer here. Now we're all threaded. Now what I have to do is just close the working door, and I'm going to close the front door, and I'm just going to put my threads under the foot back here to the left, and I'm just going to walk it a couple times just to make sure everything's looking good. And another thing this serger has is a little trim bin that attaches right to the machine. You just put it in one of those holes and it just snaps down. Our machine is all threaded and ready to stitch. The first stitch we're going to accomplish is the 4-thread overlock. And the manual will give you the recommendations for tensions. The needle at 4, the right needle at 4. We're going to have our upper looper at 4 and our lower looper. These are places we're going to start. There is a stitch width guide on this side of the serger, and that's set at 6. Our stitch length is set at 2.5, and there's a little mark there, and the differential feed is at 1. And we're going to go over that later in the video, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, I'm going to stitch the 4-thread overlock on denim. I'm going to lift up the toe and just stitch, cutting off a little bit of that edge. Now the impressive part of this serger, there's a lever here that will cut and trim that thread tail. I'm going to push down on the lever, which raises the blade. I just basically insert that tail after stitching off about 5 inches. And when you release the lever, it cut the thread. Now we've sewn a beautiful 4-thread overlock. If you could see the color coding, the red is this left needle. The orange is the right needle. Your green is the upper looper. And if you turn around the back, you could see the lower looper, the blue. Now let's try that stitch on 2 pieces of cotton fabric. We'll put our right sides together, lift our toe, stitch off about 5 inches, raise our blade, release the lever, and now we've got a beautiful, without changing any of the tensions, another 4-thread overlock. Now if I open this up, you can see that makes a great seam for garments. Now we're also going to try this on a knit fabric. This is a jersey t-shirt knit, and I'm not changing any of the tensions. I'm basically going to stitch right sides together. And without changing any tensions or making any adjustments, I've got a beautiful 4-thread overlock t-shirt knit jersey. Now another application, we can gather on the serger using a 4-thread overlock. We just got to change a few tensions here. The left needle we're going to raise to 5. The right needle 5, and these recommendations, as I stated, are on page 28 of your manual. And then the lower looper at 4, the upper looper at 4, our stitch width at 6. We're going to change our stitch length to 4.5. Now this is the stitch, we're going to expand that out to 4.5, and then we're going to change our differential feed to 2. So I'm going to move my differential feed lever up to 2. That's at the highest point. You just put your fabric under your foot and just stitch. Look at that beautiful gathering. Now, if I wanted to gather this even more, what I would do is just locate the orange and the red needle thread and gather that up more. But this did a great job of gathering just by changing a few selections and using my differential feed. On the Baby Lock Vibrant offers an optional Serger 6-foot kit. And it includes the beading foot, the blind hem foot in 2 different sizes, 0.5 millimeter and 1 millimeter, the cording foot, elasting foot, and a ruffling foot. Right now I'd like to show you how the elastic foot works. This is the elastic foot, and you insert your elastic up to 5/8 inches wide under this guide along the roller. And there's a tension knob here that applies more tension to the elastic so it would feed less. So you would basically have a tighter gather with that elastic. And when you install, you could take it and install this elastic on the foot before you put it on the machine. And it's got a little guide here in the back that keeps it straight. You want to keep that elastic to the right. And I'm basically going to install my foot on the machine. Gonna make sure it's aligned. Lower my presser foot, and I'm just gonna get a couple stitches here to get that going. And now I'm gonna tighten this screw to apply a little bit more tension on the elastic because I want it a tight gather. And I've got my differential feed at the normal overlock, 4-thread overlock. Everything's threaded for 4-thread overlock. And I'm going to stitch the elastic to the wrong side of my fabric. I don't have to do anything with this elastic because the foot's going to do the work for me. All I have to do is concentrate on feeding this fabric. I'm going to pull a little bit towards the back so it starts feeding well. Now, look at that beautiful finish. Nice gathers using that elastic foot and just a 4-thread overlock stitch on the Baby Lock Vibrant. Now, with the 4-thread overlock and just a few adjustments, we're going to use the gathering foot. And we're going to gather fabric and attach it to another piece of fabric at the same time. Now, our tensions are still set at 4. But we are going to engage our differential feed, so we're going to raise that up to 2. And we're going to increase our stitch length to 4. I'm going to install my foot, and it snaps right on. And the piece I'm going to gather is going to be underneath the foot. So I'm going to lower my presser foot, and I'm just going to start gathering this just a bit to get it started. And then the piece I'm going to attach it to, I'm basically going to follow the guide here on the top and butt it up right to the needle. And this is going to gather the bottom fabric and attach it to my top piece all in one swoop. There we go. We've attached our ruffle to a flat piece of fabric using the gathering foot. Now we're going to set up the Baby Lock Vibrant for the 3-thread wide. I'm going to remove my tray, just lift, open my door, and there's an accessory tray that holds the extra needles, the little brush, and the little tool to remove your needles. So we're going to remove, since we're doing a wide, we're going to keep the left needle and we're going to remove the right needle. So I'm going to trim and remove the orange thread, and I'm going to unscrew the right needle and just simply remove it. You want to tighten that screw after you remove it. And then we're going to complete our setup for the 3-thread wide. So our needle tension is going to be still set on 4, but our upper looper is going to be set at 3.5, so I'm going to move that up a little bit. My lower looper set at 2. My cutting width, I'm going to put at 5.5. Differential feed at 1. And my stitch length at 2.5. So now we're set up for a 3-thread wide. Now we're going to create some custom piping using the cording foot from the optional kit. If you look at the foot, it's got this little guide here for the cord. And I'm going to snap on my cording foot. And I'm ready for the 3-thread wide. Now, I cut my piece of fabric 1.5 inches wide. And I'm basically going to encase that cording inside that piece of fabric, and I'm going to apply it to the edge of my fabric all at the same time. So I'm going to raise my foot, and I'm going to first feed that cord, and it will automatically fit right inside there. And I'll just take a couple stitches. And now I'm going to just hold my fabric on the edge of the piece I'm going to stitch it on, lift up my foot, and I'm just going to serge. And the serger is just guiding that cord along that groove automatically. You just continue to stitch. Now we've installed our custom piping, and that makes a beautiful edge for any kind of home decor, bags, garments, anything you would need a custom piping for. The next thing I'd like to show you with the cording foot, we're still set up for a 3-thread wide overlock, is how to install a zipper. Now you want to get a zipper that's longer than your base fabric. And what I've done is I've put Wonder Tape along the edge, the outer edge of the zipper, opened it up, and I'm placing it along the edge. Now you want to put it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, because we're going to trim some of this off. And what's going to happen is this zipper coil is going to run right through that groove, and we'll have a finished seam and install our zipper. This is for an exposed zipper. So lift up our presser foot, and we'll align our zipper right on that foot in the groove. And I'm going to sew. Once we get down to the end, we're just going to stitch off to the left. Now you're going to see that our zipper will close, and it butts that stitching right up to that zipper line. Now the next thing we're going to do is remove this piece and attach the right side of the zipper. Now I'm doing the right side of the zipper in the same manner. That zipper coil is automatically going to be staying in that groove on the cording foot. And I'm just going to zip my zipper up, and I'm going to serge the edge of this to keep that encased. And I just did a little bar tack there to keep that pull from pulling off. And voila, you've used your cording foot to install a zipper on the Baby-Lock Vibrant. The next thing we're going to do is we're still on the 3-thread overlock using the same settings in the manual for 3-thread overlock wide, but the Baby-Lock Valiant comes with this little cutting guide, and there's a little cutout on this plate, and that tab just fits right in there, so you can use this as a guide, and that will you'll put the raw edge here that'll cut off, and you want to measure your needle, which is this little notch here, and we're going to do some piecing using it for a 1/4 inch seam used on the Baby-Lock Vibrant. Now to set this up, originally I marked a 1/4 inch seam, and I just want to line this up. So I'm going to move my guide right where it aligns with the needle, and now I'm set. Any piecing I do from here on out, I know that this is the mark that I'm going to use to get my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I will put my blocks together right sides together, and I'm going to stitch a 3-thread overlock. I'll make a little floor patch here. Now these seams are going to nest, which will make it easy for piecing and matching our seams. Just gonna finger press this. So my quadrant seam allowance. And I'll open it up, and there I have my floor patch. Perfectly matched seam. Using just the standard foot and my guide, my cutting guide, and the 3-thread overlock wide. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a 3-thread rolled hem. Now I've changed my needle from the left needle to the right needle, and that's going to create the narrow hem. And I'm going to do a little bit different thing right now. We're going to make a lettuce edge on a knit fabric. So along this edge, when we do that narrow hem, we're going to use our differential feed to stretch that out as we sew. So I've moved my differential feed all the way down to 0.07. I've got my stitch length on 1. And another thing we got to do for this application is to remove the stitch finger. Now I'm going to open up my door, open up the working table, and here is our stitch finger. And all I have to do is pull that straight out, and you want to make sure that you put that back in this little slot here in that compartment so you don't lose it. So now we've removed that stitch finger. I can close the working table, close my side table, and with our right needle tension at 2.5, upper looper at 4.5, my lower looper at 2. I still have my cutting width at 5.5. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew on the stretchy part of the knit. This is a jersey knit. I'm just going to stitch. This is a 3-thread narrow hem with a very close stitch at 1. And we've engaged our differential feed to stretch the fabric as we sew. And this is what's going to create what we call lettuce edge. Now, to create that, we want to stretch that edge out. And this is really nice on the edge of a t-shirt or dress or even any kind of home decor if you're going to use that knit. But if you look, that created such a decorative edge for the narrow hem. The next thing we're going to do is a picot edge on a very fine fabric. Now, instead of threading, I've got to change to a decorative thread in my upper looper. So I'm going to show you how to tie off. I'm going to open up my door. I'm just going to simply clip my green thread, which is my upper looper thread. I'm going to install my decorative thread on that cone. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to knot this right over left, left over right, and you then want to secure that. And you want to make sure that's nice and tight and test it. I'm going to tie one more knot because it seems to be slipping a little bit. Tie it nice and tight. There we go. And I'm going to trim off a little bit of this excess. And then I'm just going to pull my upper looper thread. It's going to go through the tension. I'm going to raise my presser foot. I'm going to grab behind my looper and pull it through the other disc guides. Then I'm going to pull it through my needle, or my upper looper eye, sorry. And now, if you see, just by pulling that, I didn't have to rethread, I just pulled it through. I'm going to close, came out of this one. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up for the Picot stitch. And this is going to make a nice edge on a delicate fabric, such as a scarf or something lightweight. So my right needle, 2.5. I want my upper looper at 4. I want my lower looper at 2. I'm going to put my differential feed at 1. And on my stitch length dial, there's a P, and I'm going to put it on P. My cutting width, I'm going to put on 6. And now we're ready to stitch on the edge of a delicate fabric. Lower my presser foot. I'm going to install my table. And what a beautiful edge that makes. It's using decorative thread with the Picot stitch on the Baby Lock Vibrant. The next thing we're going to do is probably the most popular stitch on any 3/4 2 thread serger, and that's the rolled hem. Now I did tie off, and I put a woolly nylon thread in my upper looper, and I just pulled it through just like we did with the decorative thread for the Picot stitch. I've got my stitch selector, stitch length on R, differential feed, regular at 1, my right needle, which we're using the right needle still, at 2.5, the upper looper at 4, the lower looper at 2. So I just want to place my fabric at the edge of my foot and just stitch. Now I'm using black thread so you can see this, but typically you would use a thread that would complement your fabric. Now I've got black in that lower looper. You can see my orange is my needle thread. Beautiful coverage, and it rolls around the back side. And that application is used on many things when you're using your Baby Lock Vibrant. I hope you've seen what an impressive serger the Baby Lock Vibrant is at a great price point. If you're interested in purchasing the Baby Lock Vibrant, please contact Phil's Sewing Machine or click the link below to visit their website.